Our attention now turns from the economic analysis of demand to the foundation of economic analysis of supply. It's the cost structure of the firm. The main goal of this class is to explore the influences on firms' costs. The key influence on cost is the quantity of output that the firm produces per period. The greater the output rate, the higher is the total cost of production. But the effect of a change in production on cost depends on how soon the firm wants to act. A firm that plans to change its output rate tomorrow has fewer options than a firm that plans ahead and intends to change its production 6 months from now. Therefore, to study the relationship between a firm's output decision and its costs, we distinguish between two decision time frames, the short run and the long run. The short run is a time frame in which the quantity of some resources, we also call it inputs, are fixed. In particular, in the short run, the firm's technology and the size of its physical plants, its factory, store, or offices are fixed, where the number of workers the firm hires are variable. Long run, the firm is able to change or vary all its inputs and can adopt a new technology and increase or decrease the size of its physical plant. Of course, the actual length of calendar time in the short run will be different from firm to firm. A pizza place can be able to increase its physical plant by adding another oven or some tables and chairs in just a few weeks. But an automobile company, in contrast, may take more than a year to increase its capacity of one of its automobile assembly plants by installing new equipment. Total cost is the cost of all inputs a firm uses in production. Fixed costs are costs that remain constant at output changes. Variable costs are costs that change as output changes. Typical physical costs include lease payment for a factory or retail place, payments for fire insurance, and payments for newspaper and TV advertising. Typical variable costs include its labor costs, raw material costs, and the cost of electricity and other utilities. Why I say they are typical? Because there are some exceptional cases. So the only standard we use to distinguish the physical costs and variable costs is to say if the cost changes as the output changes. All our firm's costs are either cost fixed or variable. We state this mathematically: TC, total cost, equal to fixed cost, FC, plus variable cost, VC. Now let's check some other important concepts. Opportunity cost. In economics, this is one of the most important concepts. Opportunity cost is the highest valued alternative that must be given up to engage in an activity. For example, when you spend time working on this chapter, you could have used this time to watch a movie, but you give up that opportunity. So watching a movie is the opportunity cost for you to study this chapter. Okay. Explicit costs. When a firm spends money, it occurs explicit costs. When a firm experiences a non-monetary opportunity cost, it incurs implicit costs. How to understand these two concepts? I mean explicit cost and implicit cost. Let's check a simple example. Suppose that Jill Johnson owns a pizza restaurant. In operating her store, Jill has to spend some money on the resources, which are explicit costs, such as the wages she pays her workers and payments she makes for rent and electricity. But some of Jill's most important costs are implicit. Before she opening her own restaurant, Jill earns a salary of $30,000 per year managing a restaurant for someone else. To start her own restaurant, Jill quit her job, withdrew $50,000 from her bank account, where it earned her interest of $3,000 every year, and used those funds to equip her restaurant. So to open her business, Jill had to give up $30,000 salaries and $3,000 in interest. This $33,000 is an implicit cost because it does not represent any payments that Jill has to make, but they are the opportunity cost for Jill to start her business. So nevertheless, giving up that $33,000 per year is a real cost to Jill. Rules of accounting generally require that only explicit costs be used for purpose of keeping the company's financial records and paying taxes. Therefore, explicit costs are sometimes called accounting costs. But remember, very important, in economics, costs include both accounting costs and implicit costs. We call it economic costs. So from now on, all the total costs shown in this course contains both accounting costs and implicit costs. Okay, after checking the basic concepts of costs, let's start with the production function, which is helping us understand the shapes of the cost curves. Let's look at the relationship between the level of production and the costs in the short run for Jill. To keep things simpler than in a more realistic situation, in this table, let's assume that Jill uses only labor, workers, and one type of the fixed cost, pizza oven, to produce a single product, pizza. Many firms use more than 2 inputs and produce more than one good, but it's easier to understand the relationship between the output and the cost by focusing on the case of a firm using only 2 inputs and producing only one good. In the short run, Jill does not have time to build a larger restaurant, install additional pizza ovens, or redesign the layout of her restaurant, so in the short run, she can increase or decrease the quantity of pizza she produces only by increasing or decreasing the quantity of workers she employs. The first 3 columns of this table show the relationship between the quantity of workers and ovens Jill uses per week and the quantity of pizza she can produce. The relationship between the inputs employed by a firm and the maximum output it can produce with these inputs is called the firm's production function. This table also shows Jill's costs. We can determine the total cost of producing a given quantity of pizza if we know how many workers and ovens are required to produce that quantity of pizza, and what Jill has to pay for those workers and pizzas. Suppose Jill has taken out a bank loan to buy 2 pizza ovens. The cost of the loan is $800 per week. Therefore, her fixed costs are $800 per week. If Jill pays $650 per week to each worker, her variable cost depends on how many workers she hires. In the short run, Jill can increase the quantity of pizza she produces only by hiring more workers. So this table shows that if she hires 1 worker, she produces 200 pizza during the week. If she hires 2 workers, she produces 450 pizzas, and so on. For a particular week, Jill's total cost of producing pizza is equal to $800 she pays on the loans for the oven, plus the amount she pays to hire workers. If Jill decides to hire 4 workers and produce 600 pizzas, her total cost is $3,400, $800 to lease the loan ovens, and $2,600 to hire the workers. Her cost per pizza is equal to her total cost of producing pizza divided by the quantity of pizza produced. If she produces 600 pizzas at a total cost of $3,400, her cost per pizza, or average total cost is 3,400 divided by 600 equal to 5.67. A firm's average total cost is always equal to its total cost divided by the quantity of output produced. This figure using the numbers in the next to the last column of the table 2 in the last slide to graph GEO's total cost. Okay, you can tell that the total cost increases slowly first, then increase sharply. And this figure uses the numbers in the last column of the table 2 to graph the average total cost. You can notice that GEO's average cost has roughly the U shape. Again, as the production increases from low levels to higher levels, average total cost falls, then becomes fairly flat before rising again at higher levels of production. To understand why average total cost has this U shape, we first need to look more closely at the production function for GEO's restaurant. In order to understand the U shape of the average total cost, given the technology available to the GEO, think first about what happens if GEO hires only one worker. That one worker will have to perform several different tasks, including taking orders from customers, baking the pizzas, bringing the pizza to the customers' tables, and getting paid on the cash register. If GEO hires 2 workers, some of these activities can be divided up. One worker could take the orders and ring up the sales, and the other one could bake the pizza. With such a division of tasks, GEO will find that hiring 2 workers actually allows her to produce more than twice as many pizza as she could produce with just 1 worker. By dividing the tasks to be performed, the division of labor, GEO reduces the time workers lose moving from one activity to the next. She also allows them to become more specialized at their tasks. This allows states that adding more of the variable inputs, such as labor, to the same amount of fixed inputs, such as an oven, will eventually cause the marginal product of the variable inputs to decline. For GEO, the marginal product of labor begins to decline when she hires the 3rd worker. Hiring 3 workers raises the quantity of pizza she produces from 450 per week to 550, but the increase in the quantity of pizza, 100, is less than the increase when she hired the 2nd worker, 250. If GEO kept adding more and more workers to the same quantity of the pizza ovens, eventually the workers would begin to get in each other's way, and the marginal product of the labor would actually become, negative. Just keep in mind that the relationship we are discussing are short-run relationships. We are assuming that the time period is too short for the firm to change its technology or the size of its physical plant. So as the person in our example, GEO considers whether to hire additional workers to produce additional pizzas. She needs to consider how much she will add to her total cost by producing the additional pizza. Marginal cost is the change in firm's total cost from producing one more unit of the good or services. We can actually calculate the marginal cost for a particular increase in output by dividing the change in the total cost by the change in the output. We can express this idea mathematically. Marginal cost equal to the change in the total cost divided by change in the quantity, remembering that the Greek letter delta means change in. Also recall the definition of the derivative Derivative is a measure of how a dependent variable changes as its input changes. So here, dependent variable is the total cost, and the independent variable, the input, is the quantity of the output. So marginal cost is actually the derivative of the total cost with respect to the quantity. So we can use the information in the table to calculate Jill's marginal cost and average total cost of producing pizza. For the first 2 workers hired, the marginal product of the labor is increasing due to the division and the specialization of the labor. This causes the marginal cost of the production to fall. For the last 4 workers hired, the marginal product of the labor is falling because of the law of diminishing returns, which causes the marginal cost of production to increase. So the marginal cost curve falls and then rises, that is, has a U shape, because the marginal product of labor rises and then falls due to the law of diminishing returns. As long as the marginal cost is below average total cost will be falling. When the marginal cost is above average total cost will be rising. The relationship between the marginal cost and the average total cost explains why the average total cost curve also has a U shape. Graphing cost curves. We have seen that we calculate average total cost by dividing total cost by the quantity of output produced. Similarly, we can calculate the average fixed cost by dividing fixed cost by the quantity of output produced, and we can produce average variable cost by dividing the total variable cost by the quantity of output produced, or mathematically, with Q being the level of the output, we have average total cost equal to ATC equal to TC divided by Q. Average fixed cost AFC equal to FC over Q. Average variable cost equal to AVC equal to VC over Q. Finally, notice that average total cost is the sum of the average fixed cost plus average variable cost. ATC equal to AFC plus AVC. We will use graphs like this in the next several chapters to analyze how firms decide the level of output to produce and the price to charge. So, before going further, be sure you understand the following 3 key facts about this figure. First, the marginal cost, MC, is this one, this purple curve. Marginal cost. Average total cost is this one, average total cost, and average variable cost is this one. Curves are all U-shaped, and the marginal cost curve intersects the average variable cost and the average total cost at their minimum points here, at their minimum points. When marginal cost is less than either average variable cost or average total cost, it causes them to decrease. When marginal cost is above average variable cost or above average total cost, those costs curves increase. Therefore, when marginal cost equals average variable cost or average total cost, they must be at their minimum points. Second, as output increases, average fixed cost gets smaller and smaller. This happens because in calculating average fixed cost, we are dividing something that gets larger and larger, output, into something that remains constant, fixed cost. See, fixed cost is here, fixed cost. Firms often refer to this process of lowering average fixed cost by selling more output as spreading the overhead. Third, as output increases, the difference between the average total cost and the average variable cost decreases. The difference decreases. This happens because the difference between average total cost and the average variable cost is actually average fixed cost, which gets smaller as output increases. Next, let's take a look at the costs in the long run. The distinction between fixed cost and variable cost that we just discussed applies to the short run but not to the long run. For example, in the short run, Jill has fixed costs of $800 per week because she signed a loan agreement with the bank when she bought her pizza ovens. In the long run, the cost of purchasing more pizza ovens becomes variable because Jill can choose whether to expand her business by buying more ovens. The same would be true of any other fixed costs a company like Jill might have. Once a company has purchased a fire insurance policy, the cost of the policy is fixed. But when the policy expires, the company must decide whether to renew it, and the cost becomes variable. The important point here is, in the long run, our costs are variable. There are no fixed costs in the long run. In other words, in the long run, total cost equals variable cost, and average total cost equals average variable cost. Managers of successful firms simultaneously consider how they can most profitably run their current store, factory, or office, and also whether in the long run they would be more profitable if they become larger or possibly smaller. Jill must consider how to run her current restaurant, which has only 2 pizza ovens, and she must also plan what to do when her current bank loan is paid off and the lease on her store ends. Should she buy more pizza ovens, or should she lease a larger restaurant? Short-run average cost curves represent the costs a firm faces when some inputs, such as the quantity of machine it uses, is fixed. But the long-run average cost curve shows the lowest cost at which a firm is able to produce a given quantity of output in the long run, when no inputs are fixed. So a firm may experience economies of scale, which means the firm's long-run average cost falls as it increases the quantity of output it produces. We can actually see the effects of the economies of scale in this figure, which shows the relationship between the short-run and long-run average cost curves. Managers can use long-run average cost curves for planning because they show the effect on cost of expanding output by, for example, building a larger factory or store. So when a firm's long-run average cost falls as it increases the quantity of output it produces, we see the firm experience economies of scale. A firm may experience economies of scale for several reasons. First, as in the case of Barnes & Noble, the firm's technology may make it possible to increase production with a smaller proportional increase in at least one input. Second, both workers and managers can become more specialized, enabling them to become more productive as output expands. Third, large firms like Walmart, General Motors may be able to purchase inputs at lower costs than smaller competitors. In fact, as Walmart expanded, its bargaining power with its suppliers increases and its average cost fell. Finally, as a firm expands, it may be able to borrow money at a lower interest rate, thereby lowering its costs. Economies of scale do not continue forever. The long-run average cost curve in most industries has a flat segment here that often stretches over substantial range of the output. Over this range of output, firms in the industry experience constant returns to scale. As these firms increase their output, they have to increase their input, such as size of the store and quantity of the workers. The level of output at which our economies of scale are exhausted is known as the minimum efficient scale. It's right here. Very large companies experience increasing average costs as managers begin to have difficulty coordinating the operations of the store. We say the firms in the industry start to experience these economies of scale. For example, firms in the auto industry can also experience these economies of scale. For example, the Toyota found that as it expanded production at its Georgetown, Kentucky plant and its plants in China, its manager had difficulty keeping average cost from rising. So this is kind of the paradox many highly successful companies face. Getting bigger does not always mean getting better. In order to help you with your homework, let's go through this mathematical restatement of the short-run cost function. The general form of the short-run cost function is Tc equal to FQ, where Tc is the total cost, Q is output. There are three basic forms of the cost function: the linear, the quadratic, and the cubic function. For example, those are the short-run cost functions. The first one is the linear function, total cost equal to 20 plus 4Q, 4 times Q. The second example of the cost function is total cost equal to 20 plus 2Q plus 0.5Q squared. The third one is total cost equal to 100 plus 60Q minus 5Q squared plus 0.7Q cubed. Let's walk through the following steps to understand. First, how we calculate the total cost, total fixed cost, total variable cost, average total cost, average fixed cost, average variable cost, and marginal cost for above three equations. Second, how we plot them on a graph. Okay, for total cost equal to 20 plus 4Q, the total fixed cost component of this equation is simply the constant term 20. Why? Because it does not change as output Q changes. The total variable cost TVC is 4Q, this part. Average fixed cost is total fixed cost divided by Q, that is 20 divided by Q. Average variable cost equal to total variable cost divided by Q, so it's 4Q divided by Q, we get a 4. Marginal cost, MC, is actually the derivative of total cost with respect to output Q. Therefore, marginal cost equal to dy over dx. Here, the dependent variable y is total cost, and the independent variable x is Q. So we can write this as marginal cost is dTc over dQ is 4. How to calculate, the basic rules, please check the notes on math. For total cost equal to 20 plus 2Q plus 0.5Q squared, the total fixed cost component of this equation is a constant term, 20 again, which does not change as output changes. The total variable cost is this part, 2Q plus 0.5Q squared. It does change as output changes. Average fixed cost is total fixed cost, 20 divided by Q, so we get a 20 over Q. Average variable cost is the total variable cost, 2Q plus 0.5 Q squared divided by Q, then we get a 2 plus 0.5 Q. Marginal cost again is dTc over dQ, we get a 2 plus Q. Why? Because the derivative of constant number 20 is 0, and the derivative of 2Q is 2. Derivative of 0.5 Q squared is 0.5 times 2 times Q, so that is Q. Okay, if you forget about the basic calculation rules of derivative, then just remember, that's all you need for this class. Just remember that derivative of Q is 1. Derivative of Q squared is Q. Derivative of Q cubed is 2 times Q squared. The derivative of a constant number is 0. For total cost is 100 plus 60Q minus 5Q squared plus 0.7Q cubed. Total fixed cost is constant term here, 100. Total variable cost is this part, 60Q minus 5Q squared plus 0.7Q cubed. Average fixed cost is total fixed cost 100 divided by Q. Average variable cost, AVC, equal to total variable cost, 60Q minus 5Q squared plus 0.7Q cubed divided by Q. We get 60 minus 5Q plus 0.7Q squared. Marginal cost is dTc over dQ equal to derivative of 100 is 0. Derivative of 60Q is 60. Derivative of 5Q squared is 5 times 2 times Q, so it's 10Q. Plus derivative of 0.7Q cubed is 0.7 times 3 times Q squared, so it's 2.1 Q squared. 2.1 Q squared here. In order to plot the graphs for above costs, we assume that Q is from 0 to 20. Then plug the equations into Excel sheets. Okay, let's first check the function of total cost equal to 20 plus 4Q. Please type in the output, the quantity of the output, the total fixed cost, the total variable cost, the total cost, average fixed cost, average variable cost, average total cost, and marginal cost in the first row. Then for the output from 0 to 20, you put in the 0 to 20 for the output. Let's check out the total fixed cost. We already know the fixed cost for the cost function is 20 plus 4Q is 20, just equal to 20. Then total variable cost, because when the output is 0, total variable cost is 0. And based on the equation, we know the total variable cost is 4Q, right? It's 4Q. So you actually equal to, you type this equal to 4 times output Q. Then bring down this little button, you get all the total variable cost. And the total cost equal to, we get total cost by adding the fixed cost plus total variable cost. So bring the buttons down, you get the total cost. For the average fixed cost, let's start with this cell. Why? Because the average fixed cost equal to the total fixed cost divided by the quantity of the output. And you know 0 cannot be the denominator. So this one equal to total fixed cost divided by output. Copy the formula all the way down, then you will get the data for this column. The next one is the average variable cost. We get the average variable cost by dividing the total variable cost by the output. So average variable cost equal to total variable cost, this one, divided by quantity of the output. So you bring the button down, you can get the average variable cost for this. Then average total cost equal to average fixed cost equal plus average fixed cost plus average variable cost. Here we go. Then we get the average total cost. Bring it down, you can get everything one. Then it's marginal cost. So the marginal cost in our PowerPoint slides, we wrote the formulas out, right? So the marginal cost of TC equal to 20 plus 4Q equal to 4. So it's this one, you just type 2 equal to 4. Then bring this down. So marginal costs are the same for this linear cost function. Next, let's check how we plot those data on graphs. So usually we put the total fixed cost, the total variable cost, and total cost in one figure, and we put the average fixed cost, average variable cost, average total cost, and marginal cost in another one. So let's choose this one first. Select this part, then go to Insert, click the scatters, click this smooth curves. Here we go. Hold on, let me put the screen here. See, this is the total. The blue one is the total fixed cost. Is 20. It does not change as the output changes. Total variable cost is this red line, and the total cost is this green line. The difference between the total cost and the total variable cost is the total fixed cost. Okay, next, let's say when the function is total cost equal to 20 plus 2q plus 0.5q squared. Again, let's put in the output from 0 to 1 to 20, sorry. So actually bring this down. Then total fixed cost. Total fixed cost we already know is equal to 20. Total variable cost equal to 2 times Q plus 0.5 times Q squared. Then total cost equal to total fixed cost plus total variable cost. It's 20. Then average fixed cost. Remember, we started from this cell because 0 cannot be the denominator. So average fixed cost equal to the total fixed cost divided by output. Can see the average fixed cost getting smaller and smaller and smaller. Next one, the average variable cost equal to total variable cost divided by output. So copy the formulas. Then we get the average total cost equal to average fixed cost plus average variable cost. Here we go. The marginal cost. So the marginal cost of TC equal to 20 plus 2Q plus 0.5Q squared. The derivative of that, we get 2 plus Q. Right? Here we go. Now let's graph it. again we put a insert scatters, okay, those are the graphs for total fixed cost, total variable cost, and the total cost. Is a curve now, it's not a straight line. Next one, let's check the graphs for average fixed cost, average variable cost, average total cost, and the marginal cost. Select the output, press the Control, then you can select them at the same time. Insert scatters, curves, here we go. Here we go. So the average fixed cost, as what we've seen, is get smaller and smaller as output increases, and average variable cost is here, and average total cost is the green one, and marginal cost is the purple one. Marginal cost passed by the average total cost and the average variable cost by through their minimum points. Okay, the last one is the total cost equal to 100 plus 60 minus 5q squared plus 0.7q cubed. Okay, let me delete this part. Okay, put the 0 to 20 for the output, so we can check the costs, all sorts of costs for such a production. So the total fixed cost equal to 100, as what we did in the point slide. Total variable cost equal to 60 times q minus 5 times q square plus 0.7 times q cubed. Putting down the little button to copy all the formulas. Then total cost equal to fixed cost plus total variable cost. Then average fixed cost. Start with this cell again. So average fixed cost is the total fixed cost divided by quantity, the output. So average variable cost equal to total variable cost, this one, divided by output 55.7. Average total cost equal to average fixed cost plus average variable cost. Okay, and the marginal cost. Marginal cost equal to, based on what we get, MC here equal to 60 plus, minus 10 times quantity plus 0.7 times 3 is 2.1 times Q square. Okay, so we get all the data now. Let's plot them. Select this first 4 columns, then go to the insert. Here we go. That's the graph we get. Okay. Total cost, total variable cost, and total fixed cost. Because the total fixed cost is a very small number, so the difference between the total cost and total variable cost is very small. Okay, next let's find out the graphs for average fixed cost, average variable cost, and average everyone. Again, let's select the output first, and then press down the control, select all of them, insert, scatters, here, yep, that's the graphs we get here. So average total cost, the green line, the average variable cost, the red one, and the blue one is average fixed cost, gets smaller, and this is the purple one is marginal cost. So marginal cost goes through the lowest point of the average total cost and the average variable cost. Remember, you can tell the marginal cost go down first as the output increase, then start to increase, because the law of diminishing returns. Okay, so if you have any questions, please let me know.